Hello and welcome to Author Update. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr. and joining with me is Jonathan Shuerger. This is the show where we talk about the news and we also answer your questions. And we have a new and improved system where we should be able to put your questions and comments right up on the screen. And so if you have commentary on that particular news story that we're talking about, chime in and you may just become a part of the show if you're watching live. For those of you watching in the future, there will be a new blank comment section that you can comment on that will start over as soon as we are no longer live. So with that, Jonathan, what's the first news story?
All right, let's get her going. First thing we're going to talk about today is Amazon Ads news expansion. So they have recently expanded to include their sponsored ads in the countries of India, Mexico, Netherlands, and Japan. This is, of course, a big development for authors in opening up new markets that have not yet been saturated by Amazon Ads advertising. Thomas, do you have any thoughts on that?
So the biggest one here is India. There's more English speakers in India than there are English speakers in the United States. So it's a very big potential market. But if you want to be price competitive, you're going to have to price your book very inexpensively. But I think it's definitely worth experimenting. Sometimes authors will find that they are almost randomly super popular in one country or another. So famously, Larry Correia is huge in Czechia. What used to be the Czech Republic, and it's changing its name to Czechia. Somebody can correct me in the chat. Czech Republic is still Czechia. That's the
Czechia. Name. That's right.
So
Czechia is totally different.
Yeah. So he was so popular that they ended up doing a whole book in Czech in his story world because his books had really taken off there, and so he kind of expanded his story world into Czechia to accommodate that fan base. So having more access to more countries is more better.
And I totally agree with that. I've actually been seeing a lot of demand from readers in those countries. They're actually looking for books that were able to come to them. So I think this is a great move by Amazon Ads to allow authors to do that. All right, we're going to move on into our technology section. Thomas's favorite. We're going to talk about, I'm so sorry, people. This week, AI is all over the news, and all of it is necessary to know. First, we're going to talk about how traditional publishing is starting to embrace AI. Wiley Publishers announced new AI guidelines. They're looking at being able to embrace the shift rather than fight it. They had tons of researchers asking for permission or guidelines on how to ethically embrace AI as they're using it for research. Thomas, I have never heard of Wiley. Why is this important?
So Wiley is the first domino of all of the dominoes of all of traditional publishing eventually embracing AI. So you actually have heard of Wiley. Everybody has. They're one of the few publishing companies that's really, really good at branding. So they're the company behind the Dummies books. They're the company, I believe, behind the O'Reilly technical books. And they tend to be out in front of the rest of publishing from a technological perspective. And so while they're not as big as a Random House or a Scholastic in terms of total unit sales, in terms of dollars, they actually do really well because the Dummies book is like $30, $35. And these are 1990s numbers. So they also do a lot of textbooks, I believe. We'll see more publishers follow them. They're very much a trend setter in what they're doing. And I followed them for a long time. They're really good at branding. They're one of the top brands in all of publishing, and they know what they're about. And once one publisher starts accepting AI, all the others will follow.
And moving on from them, we have to talk about the big dog in the room. A couple of days ago, ChatGPT dropped the image generator. And I'm telling you, if you haven't tried this thing, it's available on the free plan. You need to go and try out the ChatGPT image generator. We're talking, it can do book covers, ads. It doesn't mess up fingers. It can do text. It is doing a fantastic job, and it's easier to use than Midjourney, which requires a very specific set of prompting in order to be able to use. You can just do long form text-based stuff, which is all authors love to do. Now, Thomas, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and you can highlight parts of an image and make changes. So this isn't just an improvement, it's a completely new approach to generating images. So Midjourney uses a technique called diffusion, which is also what Stable Diffusion uses, and DALL-E. So all of the big AI systems have all used some version of diffusion, where it creates just random pixels and then it fixes it to be slightly more like a cat or whatever you described. And then it fixes it again and fixes it again. And after 1,000 fixes, it looks like what you made. And it's why if you describe, like, put a room with a clock, you might get a room with a dozen clocks because it's each pixel is like correcting itself to be like a clock, which is why the prompt has to be so precise if you're using a system like Midjourney. But that's not how this new engine works. The new engine runs on a language model that um, draws the picture one pixel at a time, kind of from top to bottom. So instead of
Mhm.
from blurry to clear, it's from top to bottom. But a better way to think of it is if you watch a painter paint, the painter will often start with a sketch with pencil and then kind of fill in the details from there. And what GPT's model is doing is it's using English language to pencil in the image and then fill it in. And why this is so key for authors is that it can now handle text. So if you've ever played with AI images, you can get an image made, but you have to add the text yourself because DALL-E and Midjourney were not fluent in English. They often couldn't spell a single word correctly.
Right.
But this new system is just as good at writing on an image as it was writing plain text, which means you can create a book cover for your reader magnet with one prompt and you're done.
From your
Fully
back
finished.
cover description.
So you can paste in the book description of your book, say, generate me a book cover that looks like this in the style of, and then mention one of your other books or a book that you like, and it will just bloop out a book cover. Done. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for an actual book, but for reader magnet creation, this is going to rapidly reduce the cost of getting a good reader magnet. You'll never get a Jurassic Park level cover here, but it'll often be better than a lot of the template covers that a lot of authors use. And that's just one use case.
I know. I tried several use cases from my perspective as an author. So I had it make ads. Okay, I wanted to see, hey, make me some meta ads using this book description. I just threw in my book description. Make me some meta ads, and it gave me text. It gave me, of course, the copy. It gave me the audience, and it gave me the image. And then you can feed it an image and say, hey, give me stuff based on this. And it makes you stuff, of course, that's in a hierarchical ranked structure. Like, this has been shown to prove to work the best, which is exactly what you want in marketing, because there's no art in marketing. It's just knowing what works the best. And it was incredible. I'm like, oh man, they just executed kind of the industry.
An author friend of mine was testing this out yesterday, and she has 2 books in a series that are very tightly branded to each other. And she has a 3rd book she's always wanted to add to this series. And so she just, on a lark, asked GPT to do a cover for the book 3 in the style of the first 2, and it nailed it. It got it so good. It's like shockingly good. And it's going to change a lot. I'm soon I will have a patron toolbox tool for creating covers for reader magnets where you can put this into practice right away. The API for this new engine isn't available yet, and that's the holdup. But as soon as that API is available, I'm going to add a tool to the toolbox. You do need to have the paid version of GPT. The free version doesn't unlock this new image engine. If you've been seeing like cartoon versions of people, a really common tool for this is like, make me look like I'm in The Simpsons, or take this picture.
Where have
and
we
make it look like
seen that, Thomas?
animated in Studio Ghibli. In fact, we had the image for this very episode. I made a Studio Ghibli version of. So we have a lot of chats coming in. Yeah, so we won't necessarily respond to all of them, but if somebody says something interesting in the chat, we'll throw it up on the screen. This is our new technology. We have the power. So yeah, I encourage you to play with it and fiddle with it. It's going to be really good for poor authors. It's going to be really good for indie authors. It's going to, if you've been using Canva or BookBrush, a lot of the things that you were doing in Canva and BookBrush, it took you 30 minutes now or an hour, you can now do in 5 minutes using GPT's new image engine. It's going to be transformative. It's
But
not going to be good for 100covers.com.
Oh, man. I'm going to throw some devil's advocate stuff at you, though, because we're
Okay.
going to address a lot of the problems that a lot of authors or artists have with AI generation. Are we taking jobs away from people that are supposed to have jobs? Like, we're talking about a machine which does not have a human soul,
Yeah.
which is now going to be taking jobs and, you know, food out of the mouths of already starving artists.
So that has not been what's happened with technology over time. If you look at the history of technological revolutions, 200 years ago, 90% of us were working in the fields, and now only 5% of us are working in the fields, and yet we all still have jobs. And I think a good comparison is the spreadsheet. So we had computers in the 70s, but there wasn't anything you could do with them. They just had blinking lights, and they were kind of curiosities. You'd have these homebrew computer clubs that would build the computer, and it was kind of like a model car. And then the Apple II came out, and around the same time the Apple II came out, this program called, what was it called? Something 123. It was the initial spreadsheet. I'm blanking on the name. It's not Excel. It was a precursor to Excel. And before VisiCalc, that's what it's called, I believe. And so before VisiCalc came out, you would have an accountant manually make you a spreadsheet. So making a spreadsheet was a very intensive human task where somebody with an abacus, Lotus 123, I think came after VisiCalc, but it was based off of VisiCalc. Somebody fact check me. Go look it up. See if VisiCalc was the first. So by hand adding up the columns. So if I'm a manager for IBM and I want a spreadsheet, I would hire a company or I'd go to my accounting department and I would request the spreadsheet. I would give them the data and I would wait a week as an accountant by hand added up all the columns with a abacus or later with a calculator. So then VisiCalc comes out and it can do that whole summing of a column of numbers instantly, even with Apple IIe technology. And so the question is, we've now just put out of work all of the accountants that were adding up columns and numbers. So did the number of accounting jobs go up or go down? You would think the number would go down, but just the opposite happened. The demand for accountants went up. In fact, it's higher now than it's ever been. I have stopped referring authors to my dad's accounting firm because they are not accepting new clients. Like, it's almost impossible to find a CPA right now who will take you on as a client because the demand for accountants is higher than it's ever been, despite the fact that there's more automation, there's more AI than ever before. And we saw the same thing with looms. We saw the same thing with a lot of different jobs throughout history. What's really happening is that we're democratizing art. So it used to be the creation of art was reserved for the elites. People had basically for the aristocracy. And if you weren't an aristocrat, you weren't allowed to really do art because it was prohibitively expensive. It was punishingly difficult to get into. And even if you were talented, getting your art sold wasn't really based off of how good it was. It was based off of your personal network, right? If you're rich enough and famous enough and you banana or duct tape a banana to the wall of a museum, you can get paid $1 million for that. Joe Blow from the construction yard couldn't do that, but an aristocrat could, right? That's kind of the current state of art. And now the tools of art making are being pushed down to people who couldn't afford to go to art school for 4 years. And I think that is going to really change the political tenor and religious tenor of art, because our current aristocratic class is very myopic politically and religiously. They're all really similar to each other. And there's a lot of people that don't feel particularly represented with the art that's created right now. And now those people have the tools to make art themselves. And I think that's going to be good for society. And I think it'll be good for artists to compete with the peasants that they have looked down on.
So my contention is that when automation hit factories in the United States, what it did was it just took care of a lot of jobs, opened up other jobs and other opportunities. Now, with AI automating a lot of things that can have been done already, it's just going to eliminate the mediocre. So if your writing is not original, if it has no voice, it can easily be done by a robot. And now we have a robot that can do it more than we can. And so it's really going to drive us to become more competitive. Matter of fact, I'm going to keep talking about this again in the future, but I think that the real currency that's coming in the future is going to be authenticity. Prove your humanity, show your relationship, your ability to speak to the human soul. And I think that is where creativity needs to go next, because that's what people are going to be looking for. What do we have on social media? We have tons of bot interactions. I have tons of DMs in my inbox from bots who are like, hey, do you want to use my book marketing services? And, it's causing you to devalue the platforms that those are coming from. And right now, people are they're starving for human interaction. And so I think that's where the trend is going. I think that's where the momentum is taking us.
And I think that authenticity is going to move more and more into the real world, where so it used to be storytelling was a live experience. Your dad would tell you a story as you were going to bed. The elder of the village would tell a story at the fire. Or a minstrel would sing a poem of the Great War. Tell you the story of Achilles, anger be thy song, immortal one. Achilles' anger doomed and ruinous, that would send immortal souls to the gates of Hades. And the will of Zeus was done. And he's strumming on the lyre, and you're all listening, right? It was a performance. Same with music. Music was a performance, and people were paid to perform music. And then these infernal machines came along, where now you don't get paid to perform music. A small aristocratic class gets paid to record music, right? And so instead of there being 1,000 bards in 1,000 villages, there's one super bard that sings for everyone, and the other 999 bards have been put out of work. And I think that trend is being reversed now, where the voices of the people are being restored. And as we get off the computers and go back into real life, the performance will be valued more.
Because you can trust it more, because you can see it being created more. Like, what is this? Like the show with Simon Cowell Jr. with America's Got Talent or something like that. They do tons of AI generated performances, and I'm like, is this like the WWE phenomenon? Like, who cares about this?
So a few more quick AI news. We have to mention Gemini 2.5,
yes,
because there's actually a conspiracy that OpenAI has been sitting on this new image engine for over a year, or almost a year, and they finally got beat. There's an AI model that's better, faster, and cheaper than ChatGPT that Google released, Gemini 2.5. And to keep everyone from switching over, they wanted to steal the thunder with funny cartoons. So Gemini's model is just crazy good. And you can upload your whole book to it, and it can have your whole book as a context window for the entirety of your interaction. And it's like 1/10 the price of the other tools from a token perspective. And I'd encourage you to check it out. A lot of platforms offer it for free because it's so cheap. Gemini 2 for sure. Gemini 2 Flash is often free on various websites. And if you do pay on a site like Strayco or whatever, it's hardly any credits. So keep an eye on that, particularly if you're wanting to generate assets off of your book.
Right.
And
so
go ahead.
That brings up the question then is, how much does a human being need to suffer for something to be art? Like, what amount of human pain or experience do I need to put into a work for it to be human enough to be considered art?
Yeah. Are you getting paid to suffer as an author?
Right, exactly. First of all, I'm not being paid at all, so there's that. But
so there's an interesting analog to this. In the end of the 1940s, we invented all these foods for soldiers to make it easier to feed soldiers abroad. And we started to commercialize these techniques that we developed in the 1940s. And one of them was cake mix, where you just add water and you put it in the oven and you could have a cake. So it's way easier than making a cake from scratch. And the product failed. And the big marketing innovation was realizing that women, particularly mothers, wanted to put effort into making the cake. And if it was too easy to bake the cake, it wasn't emotionally satisfying to bake the cake. So they took out the powdered oils, and they took out the powdered eggs from the recipe, and they changed the recipe to adding 2 eggs and 1 cup of oil. And that was just enough work where suddenly 1950s mothers were willing to buy the cake mix. And that's where you get the Betty Crocker cake mix. It's basically unchanged to this day. I'm sure it's got more corn syrup in it. They've swapped out the sugar, whatever.
RFK is going to change all that, Thomas.
Yeah, but the 2 eggs and the 1 cup of oil is the same. It's the same extra work, and that work is unnecessary from a physical perspective, but it is necessary from a psychological perspective, because the same thing happened with clothes washers. So in these magical machines, you put your dirty clothes in, you push a button, and it cleans your clothes. And everyone thought that would cause moms to spend less time washing clothes, and it didn't. It didn't actually save people very much time washing clothes. And so why not? Well, what ended up happening is that people just wash their clothes more often. They wanted to spend that time washing clothes, and so now people just had cleaner clothes. The result of this time-saving machine was not actually time-saving. It was cleaner clothes. The same thing happened with the car. The car didn't actually reduce the commute. The commute in London in the 1870s was like 15 to 20 minute walk. And now most people have more than a 15 or 20 minute drive, right? The fact that you can
because
go faster,
of all the cars.
because of all the cars. Now there's a bunch of traffic, but people are also living farther away from the place where they work, and so the commutes have gone down. And so one more story on this is diamonds. You can now make in a factory a diamond that is chemically identical to a real diamond. In fact, there's almost no way to tell a manufactured diamond from a natural, quote unquote, natural diamond. It's not like the cubit zirconium of the 90s. These are diamonds. They're you can use them in industrial applications just like diamonds. The only way to tell is with very, very specialized technological equipment. There's no way to tell as a human. There's no acid test like for gold. And so the question is, have these manufactured diamonds killed the market for natural diamonds? And the answer is they have not, because people, when they're buying a diamond, aren't buying a diamond. They're buying a story. In the story that it's a natural diamond is the real product being sold. It's the same with Coca-Cola. The secret recipe of Coca-Cola isn't the sugar or the caramel color number 5. It's the marketing, right? You can replicate the Coca-Cola formula. In fact, most people can't tell if you swap the bottles. They can't tell Coke from Pepsi, but they have a really strong opinion because of the marketing. And it's the same with diamonds. What people are buying when they buy a diamond is the marketing. And so one of my recommendations for you, if you're going to use AI tools to write better books or to deliver books to your readers faster like they want, it would behoove you in your marketing to really play up how miserable you are, because readers want authors to be miserable. They don't want you to talk about how wonderful this tool is at solving your grammatical problems. They want you to talk about how miserable and sad you are and how much you suffered to write this book. And that's what adds value. That's the 2 cups of oil, or that's the cup of oil and 2 eggs. And so embrace your suffering as a human. It's what makes your book worth reading.
Look, man, I can hear my mom already in every lecture. I carried you in my body for 9 months, and this is how long I was in labor with you. Like, okay, Mom.
PJ says, soon the robots will be able to make all of the cakes. Kelly Joe says, I asked ChatGPT to create a mock-up of my book, and it started to generate and sold it, said it violated policy. So I'm glad you brought this up, Kelly Joe, because this is another change, is that OpenAI has greatly relaxed their policies regarding what they can and cannot make with their image maker. There's still some restrictions, but those restrictions are greatly reduced because I suspect Grok really put the competition to them, because Grok has almost no restrictions on their image generator, and everybody switched over to Grok. Like the vast majority of memers anyway switched to using Grok. And so OpenAI, feeling the competition, switched to this new model, but they haven't rolled it out for everyone yet. So some of you using ChatGPT are still using the old DALL-E engine that has the greater restrictions. And the way around it, if you pay for GPT, which I know you do, Kelly, is to use Sora. All of the Sora users have been shifted over to this new engine. Sora is their video maker, but you can also make still images through their video maker. So I'd try it again, Kelly, using Sora through your GPT account. Amy says that she can tell the difference between Coke and Pepsi. I was at a restaurant one time, and this guy asked for Coke, and they didn't have Coke; they had Pepsi. And this is dad of a friend of mine. I was like, "It's okay," because I knew the science on this. Just fill it with Pepsi and don't tell him. So we filled it with Pepsi, and the whole meal we're looking at him, waiting for him to say something. And we were like, "Do you know that was Pepsi?" And he's like, "No, it wasn't." He didn't believe us, because the marketing is so much of the experience. So what's the next news story?
Well, in contrast to AI churning out tons of stuff that's going to wash all of us away, we're going to talk about procrastination. And as it turns out, Thomas's latest episode on procrastination is tremendously helpful. I listened to it all the way through, which is rare for one of Thomas's episodes.
You cut me deep, Jonathan. You cut me deep.
At all. But this episode is excellent. It targets the perennial complaint that authors complain of, which is we're not finishing our books for one reason or another. We have burnout, we have writer's block, we have tons of excuses or reasons or whatever it is that's causing us not to do this. And Thomas's episode is actually chock full of practical suggestions that will make it easier for us as authors to actually be productive and to complete the works that we're working on. Now, Thomas, some of these recommendations are brutal in how they can shift an author's personal life. How many of these do you actually expect an author to perform?
I think that it's more about identifying which one is the holdup for you. So for some people, it's mobile games really does zap their drive because they get dopamine from playing the mobile games, and by switching, they get their dopamine from working. But other people, a lot of the commenters on that video are beating their chests about, "Oh, I never play mobile games." It's like, okay, there's 9 other suggestions for you. Maybe one of those will be helpful. So, I mean, we all fight with motivation and with distractions. You're right. This is part of the suffering, right? It's like you talk about, this challenge that you have. And it's interesting because even AI right now is melting down because of the distractions. So many people are using GPT to make Studio Ghibli memes. The servers can't keep up, which is why they're like delaying the rollout even more, particularly to free users. So I don't know if one is more important than the others, generally speaking, but I do think that specific ones are more important for specific people. And this is where, like, listening to this episode with your writers group or with your spouse and then discussing it could be really helpful. It's like, which of these do you think I need to work on? Which of these is holding me up? And then you focus on that one.
Exactly. So do you have any idea on the potential increase in productivity in real numbers that an author can see by incorporating, say, just one of these recs?
I mean, it depends on how blocked they are. It could be totally transformational. If one, like, for instance, if you're the kind of person who's been using perfectionism as an excuse and it's holding you back, and you decide to switch from using the word perfectionism and instead use the word practice, that could be revolutionary. That could have a 10x transformation. The kind of people who use the word perfectionism or writer's block, they struggle to write a book a year. Like, that seems like a huge lift for them. Whereas other people who've gotten past those words to words like practice, they're writing a book a month, book every 2 or 3 months. And it's like game changing. And suddenly when you're writing a book a month or a book every 2 or 3 months, that's enough to feed your family. The algorithm smiles upon authors that write that fast in certain genres, and you can really make some good money. So it depends, but yeah, I mean, it is possible to write a really good book in a month or two. In fact, some of the very best books were written really quickly. I think the Christmas Carol, I think that book only took a month or two to write. I think Charles Dickens was on a deadline. He needed money for his family, and so he just sat down and he wrote the Christmas Carol.
Great motivator. I need food.
and that book is still in print today. I feel like a new Christmas Carol movie gets made every year. In fact, a lot of movies are secretly the Christmas Carol and you don't realize it. Like The Grinch is still Christmas. It's the Christmas Carol, right?
Right.
Grinch is Scrooge. Susie Lou is Tiny Tim, right? Like it swaps pretty closely to the original tale.
Yeah. Well, when I was in the Marine Corps, how we took care of our bodies, getting appropriate sleep, especially at DLI, where they were, or the Defense Language Institute, when they were dumping Arabic into our skulls in 64 weeks, and then we had to get out and be able to keep people alive by listening to Arabic. You had to be not just fluent, you had to be culturally relevant in that dialect for that location in order to keep Marines alive and make sure bad guys weren't getting our guys. And we were the only ones who had the knowledge to be able to save our guys, because they didn't know. They would just go out and patrol. And so, when we're in there, we had to take care of our bodies. We had to take care of our minds, make sure we had good recovery process. Our nutrition had to be excellent. Our sleep patterns had to be excellent. You couldn't stay up all night playing a video game because you're 19 years old and that's what 19-year-olds do. No, man, I got 3 quizzes tomorrow and about 6 weeks of college level lecture I'm about to go through in a single morning. Right? That's when I picked up my coffee habit, because I absolutely had to have some kind of acceleration to help me out here. So if you want to become more productive as an author, if you're not happy with your productivity levels, then you need to take care of yourself like you're an athlete, like you're important. It's not that you're worthless anymore and you can just gorge on Oreos and just whine about how much, you haven't gotten done today. You know what? People may actually need what it is that you're writing. And it is your responsibility and your duty to take care of yourself so you can get to work.
Justin says, oh wait, that's not the right one. Justin says Dickens, Doyle, and Shakespeare were all writing to get that paycheck. It doesn't mean they didn't care about quality. There's a whole conspiracy of people who don't think Shakespeare was Shakespeare because they don't believe that a commoner could write that well. Like, their worldview is that only aristocrats create quality. Shakespeare was not an aristocrat, therefore he couldn't have written all of those poems and all of those plays. And it's like, maybe he was just really smart and really wanted to make that paycheck. Really smart, really motivated. And then somebody was asking how they can find the procrastination video. If you subscribe to Author Media on YouTube, you'll get all of our future episodes. And if you click on our channel, it'll list all of our past episodes. And the procrastination video is the most recent video. So if you do it now, it'll take you away from this video. But if you just click on Author Media right here on YouTube where you're watching.
Don't go. Stay tuned.
Hey, you're an adult. It's a free country. You can go watch that instead of us.
No, you're not. Fine. Stay here.
Speaking of which, you should probably go to the next story.
Right. I was watching the Yoast SEO update on YouTube, actually, and they came out with this fascinating idea, is that smaller communities are likely the future of the internet. And I actually agree with their conclusion here. Big platforms like X and Facebook have lost the trust of their users because everyone's migrating to smaller, more curated communities like Blue Sky, like Discord, where you can kind of control who gets to interact with your content and also what content that you see. This migration affects authors in our attempts to reach national and global audiences through advertising on these larger platforms. Before, we had that available to us because the traffic was moving through these larger platforms. But now it seems to be content from real humans is continuing to drive engagement, especially as AI is just enabling bot creation and interaction, which is widening the chasm of trust that's already present on these huge platforms. With this trend in mind, how can authors adapt to take advantage of the hunger for human interaction and personal relationships while also trying to engage with these smaller communities?
So I disagree with this in one small way. I don't think this is the future of the internet. I think this is the present of the internet. What happened was in 2020, there was this massive crackdown on conservatives on social media. And the reaction of those conservatives was to leave for smaller platforms, where they now have a Signal chat. So a lot of people in the middle of the aisle or on the left are just now finding out about Signal, whereas folks on the right all got pushed off of social media into Signal 5 years ago. But now that Twitter is moving more towards the center, people on the left who are wanting that just us experience are moving to platforms like Blue Sky, but they're also really moving to platforms like Discord, really small communities. The social network I'm the most active on is a Discord server for my book club, or the book club that I'm a part of. And every single person in that community is somebody that I have met in person at a book club meeting, right? It is a 100% bot-free environment. I know these people. I know their families, right? Like, they've been to my house. We've shot guns together out at the ranch, right? Like, this is real community. And I feel like that's more of where the internet's headed, because you can't know if you're interacting with a human or not if you haven't met them in real life. Like, we're now Turing test passed. The AIs now have all been able to pass the Turing test. All of them. Grok can pass it. GPT can pass it. Gemini can pass it. DeepSeek can pass it. sure, if you're really clever, you can like ask it for a cake recipe and maybe you can break the Turing test and realize that it's a bot. But it's really difficult, and it creates this level of suspicion.
Yeah.
It's very exhausting. And we already have seen this in the realm of stock trading. So humans don't really trade stocks anymore. You probably haven't traded a stock in over a decade. The computers, the bots, AI owns all of our companies now. It owns it through big companies like BlackRock and Vanguard, and it's got algorithms that are making trades based off of, what the programmers did. But ultimately, the AI is making the call on when to buy and when to sell. And if you want to be scared about this, Google flash crash, where the AI is all freaked out and the market dropped 20% in like 15 minutes. And then the humans had to jump in and unplug them and then buy all the stocks back, and then it popped back up. And then they improved the coding so there wouldn't be another flash crash like that. But the bots can trade faster, and they've pushed humans out. And so if you really want to buy and sell a stock, or a company, I should say, you really have to do it with like a smaller, more privately held company. And so as things get bigger, as things get more online, they get more owned and controlled by the machine. And I mean this in both capital M machine, but also lowercase machines. And as things get local, as things get more in person, the more things are controlled by humans. And so people are like, Thomas, you're too in favor of AI. And I'm like, I actually think that AI is very scary. But I think the uses of AI that are scary to me are big, powerful corporations using it to buy and sell stocks and then vote on the boards of directors for those companies with your money. It's social networks using it. It's not you using it to write a better book. That's not the scary use of AI for me. It's not you being a little bit more efficient with your time. In fact, I think it's important for individual humans to be interacting with AI so that they're fluent, because you've got older folks who are interacting with AIs that are now cheating them out of their Social Security pensions.
Exactly.
It's like, that's an evil use of AI. It's not you writing a better book.
Nigerian princes are about to get updated.
Nigerian Prince 3000.
Well, look, I'm just going to say Terminator predicted all of this. Okay. The few human communities remaining after that nuclear apocalypse, when the machines started hunting down humans, they kept dogs to recognize when they were actually meeting a human. And the dog would sniff anybody who came in. And if the dog liked you, you were good. If he didn't like you, bullets started flying.
Yeah.
And that kind of litmus test is actually going to start happening. Maybe not on that level yet, but that kind of litmus test was already predicted, and that we're trying to figure out if you're a real person or not, because we're going to start seeing fake author personas start popping
up. It already exists.
Exactly.
When I did that episode on Christian historical fiction websites, originally there was supposed to be 10 authors, but I realized that 3 of the authors were all digital puppets of some human. They all had identical websites to each other. Their book covers were almost identical to each other. And I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole on that episode. In fact, one of the authors that I did review was like the most popular of these digital puppets. And none of them I could verify were a real person. And so it's already here. And I suspect a lot of the anti-AI chatter is actually those puppet masters trying to keep the competition away. It's the one guy in town with the tractor trying to convince everybody else in the town that tractors are evil, or paying the pastor who's railing against the evils of tractors secretly is getting money from the tractor owner. Like the anti-gambling lobby in Texas is funded by the casinos in Oklahoma, because right across the border are all of these casinos. And so they fund all of the casino lobbying groups in Texas. And that's how I think a lot of this anti-AI, not all of it, but I think the people who are most benefiting from AI are also secretly the loudest voices against it.
I have a whole big long story that I can tell you on how the Saud family got in charge of Saudi Arabia and all the oil in the area just by convincing the British that they were religious. That they were the most religious, and that just appealed to the Victorian British. Okay, well, anyway, moving on to some more political stories now. We're going to talk about the IMLS cuts to libraries and how this affects us. So on March 14th...
We weren't controversial enough talking about AI. Now let's talk about politics. Come on.
We just got President Trump in there. All right. On March 14th, Trump signed an executive order to eliminate, among others, the Institute of Museum and Library Services to the fullest extent permissible by law. Around $2 billion per year is spent on libraries. Now, that's mostly from local and state taxes, but IMLS accounts for about 10% of that funding. Now, it's believed that it is unlikely that cuts to IMLS will greatly affect the funding used for collections, for like library collections or the lending that they do, as most of that funding is used for special projects. But Thomas, do you think authors have anything to worry about here with this kind of action? Is President Trump launching a war on books?
So the first thing we need to clarify is that your local library gets money to buy books from your local community. It's the local taxes that fund that. So the IMLS is more about connecting different libraries to each other, interlibrary loans, that sort of thing. But there's a bigger, kind of more fundamental view here, and it's a Marxist view that more people is more better. So in World War II, the communists in Russia really had this view, and they were like, we need more people to charge at the Germans. They're like, but we don't have guns for all of them. Doesn't matter. More people, right? So you have like 3 guys and 1 gun between them, and it's like, wait for the guy with the gun to die, and you could pick up his gun or find another gun from a dead person. It's like, this is not a way to run a war, and it's also not a way to run an organization or a business. And what if you are familiar with business, you often find that you can do more with less. That Gideon's 300 is actually a more effective fighting force than Gideon's 20,000. And by doing layoffs and by cutting unnecessary programs and by cutting unnecessary regulations and unnecessary steps and unnecessary people, you actually can get a lot more done. This is what we saw at Twitter, right? There was all this panic. 80% of the employees at Twitter got laid off, and now it's got this new name, and it's now as profitable as it's ever been. It's twice as many users as it's ever been. It's running better than it's ever been because all of those additional people pulled the productive people into meetings. And eventually you're just in meetings all day long and you're not actually getting anything done. It's like, what if we had fewer meetings and more getting stuff done? And it's like, oh, we can actually get a lot done. And I suspect that's what's going to happen here. I'm not too concerned about it. Another thing with these cuts, it's a 2-way door. So if you cut too much, you can always refund it later. So I'm not concerned.
So the Marine Corps is predicated on this very idea. When I was over in Iraq, we had a 4-man team to do the job of the Army battalion next door. And that Army battalion got their authorizations revoked because they had so many people touching stuff, their products got polluted and they actually became illegal. And so NSA shut them down, and it was the 4 of us who did all of intel gathering for southern Iraq for a period of about 7 months. So yes, fewer, more productive, highly qualitative people is a much, much better way to operate.
And if you've ever worked on a really effective team, it's a transformative experience.
Helldivers.
People know their job and they do their job, and every person's good at the job that they're doing, and no one's getting in anyone's way. It really is like staggering. It's fun. Like it's a lot more fun to do the work, and you can get a lot more done. There's a rule of thumb in business that I think it's 50% of the production of an organization is done by the square root of the number of people in that organization. So if you have a company of 10,000 people, it's 100 people are doing like 50% of the output. If I'm remembering the math correctly. And at first that kind of blows your mind, but as you work in business, you start to realize how true that is, how there's just a handful of people who are really good at what they do, and they're the ones adding value, right? You've got this big construction company, but really there's just the one guy laying bricks, and he's really good at laying bricks, and he ends up laying half of the bricks, right? So get out of that guy's way.
There's actually a Wizard of Oz book. It's one of the spin-offs. It's really old, but they had like 21 guys. And 5 of them were generals, and 5 of them were majors, and 5 of them were captains, and 5 of them were sergeants, and there was 1 private, and that 1 private did all the fighting.
We should probably move on to the next story.
Yeah.
If you get Jonathan starting to talk about how much better the Marines are than the other branches,
we already went through your World War II reference already. I don't even want to hear it.
I haven't mentioned Rome yet. I'm holding that in my back pocket.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, let's talk about the Canadians. Okay. So Canadian booksellers are now moving to start fighting the tariffs to prevent the tariffs from affecting books moving from the US into Canada or vice versa. The two CEOs of major Canadian booksellers have joined forces to request from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney that books be exempted from Canada's upcoming tariffs on April 2nd. Books by Canadian authors printed in the US or distributed through US warehouses would be subject to a 25% tariff. Most books sold in Canada come from Canadian divisions of US publishing houses. While paper production is big in Canada, printing and warehousing of books is not, and there is concern that Canadian business lacks the capacity to replace these products, as opposed to other products such as alcohol. With a potential 25% hike on book imports, how can authors reach their Canadian readers creatively and still staying on budget?
I have a controversial opinion here, but I actually think Canada should ignore this and hit us with that 25% tariff. Because I actually think it would be good for Canadian literature. So, one of the challenges that Canada has culturally is that every major city in Canada is closer to a major American city than it is to the nearest Canadian city.
Mhm.
So, and this is true all across the border because the actual population of Canada, it's like 70% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the American border, or 60%. So Canada looks very big on a map, but most of that is almost entirely empty. Is very sparsely populated. Very different from Texas. So Texas actually has, in some ways, done a better job of being able to keep our culture separate from American imperialism, because our major cities are closer to other Texas cities than they are to the nearest major American city, with the exception of Dallas, which is, I think, closer to Oklahoma City than it is to Waco or Houston. But like Austin is closer to San Antonio, and Houston is closer to San Antonio. And so we have a Texas culture because we're able to kind of rub two sticks together, and we're able to maintain a separate culture better. So if you look at things like cuisine, Texas has two cuisines, whereas Canada has a few dishes that are unique to Canada. So this is a big frustration for Canadians. And there's been a lot of efforts over the years to try to encourage Canadian arts, Canadian literature, Canadian conferences for authors, Canadian filmmaking. And they keep getting bought up by the Americans because the Americans are so much wealthier than the Canadians on an individual basis and on a corporate basis. So the average American makes like 30 or 40% more money than the average Canadian. And this is true in terms of like their take home pay, but it's also true in terms of like their gross domestic product per person. And so what happens is that American companies will come in and buy Canadian companies. So you have Simon and Schuster will buy some successful Canadian publisher and then make it an imprint of Simon and Schuster. And you've got HarperCollins doing the same thing and Random House doing the same thing. And so Canada hitting the United States with a tariff, it throws sand in the gears of these global multinational companies. So everyone is thinking that Trump's tariffs are a way of sticking it to other countries, and that's very much the rhetoric, but that's not actually what's happening. Tariffs are not a tool against other countries. They're a tool against companies, because there's a handful of mega corporations that are basically running the world. They're so powerful that the countries pay taxes to the company. So Samsung wants to build a factory. They get paid by the taxing authority, right? So Samsung built a factory here in Austin. My taxes went to Samsung. They went to Austin first, and then they went to Samsung. They went to Texas first, and then they went to Samsung. Samsung is the multinational megacorp, is more powerful than Texas. Right? Who's the most powerful one? The one.
Did it hurt you to say that?
It does. It hurts me to say that. It's interesting because Canada and Texas are very comparable. We have similar populations. We have similar economies. I think Texas actually has a bigger economy than Canada, or it was very similar, very close. And we're facing a lot of the same challenges. And so tariffs don't hurt the local mom and pop shop very much. In fact, they may help the local mom and pop shop. Even the medium-sized company doesn't affect them very much. Maybe their inputs get a little bit more expensive, but they're also facing less competition. So in general, the medium-sized companies do quite well. But these megacorps, it just grinds them, which is why all of the megacorp controlled media outlets are anti-tariffs wall to wall, because they're terrified of it. Because if you're a megacorp with offices in 100 different countries, if America starts doing tariffs, those other 99 countries are also going to do tariffs. And now all the little shenanigans that you're doing, moving products through 1,000 different countries before you make it, becomes very difficult. So I think it'd actually be good for Canadian literary culture to slap this tariff. It will be painful in the short term, but it might actually help um, flourish Canadian literature long term. And if there's any Canadians in the live chat, do chime in.
Well,
I haven't offended you too badly.
I was going to ask you about that. Canadian authors, this is an opportunity for them because now with American books having to be at least 25% higher in cost, Canadian independent authors, if they're able to print in Canada or find a local printer, they can actually undercut in price their competitors that before they would never have been able to compete with. But a 25% drop in price is pretty substantial. What do you think the options are available for local Canadian authors then?
Well, it's actually really good for indie authors across the board because indie books are printed in the country in which they're mailed to. So typically, indie books are print on demand, and there's print on demand in Canada, there's print on demand in the United States. And so this tariff is only going to hit the big, like I said, the big megacorps are going to get hit hard. If you're Simon & Schuster, you're terrified of this tariff. If you're Joe, indie author who's writing military science fiction, now suddenly your paper books, which historically were not price competitive, are now 25% more price competitive than they were otherwise, which might be really good for you.
All right, let's move on to our last story of the day. We're looking at a beta test for Amazon-sponsored ads on retailer websites. So Amazon is running a beta test to see if spreading Amazon ads and allowing them to distribute to other retailer websites will actually produce a surge in orders from Amazon.com. So right now on iHerb.com, which is for vitamins and supplements, SayWe.com, which is more for groceries, and OrientalTrading.com, it's possible to see ads from Amazon's marketplace. Amazon is right now beta testing it for a few selected sellers, but if this beta test works, we could be seeing advertising opportunities for new markets on other retail websites. Now, should this open up to those other websites, what's your prediction on how authors can and should take advantage of this potential new capability?
New. Amazon has tried this 2 or 3 times over the last 15 years, selling ads on their website because they have just really high hosting costs. These are ads on Amazon.com taking you to Acme competing. Right. Yeah. So they keep trying this and it keeps not working because Acme Shopify store doesn't want to give their biggest nemesis money.
No, I'm sorry. That's what it's doing. Those ads are showing on the retailer web. So they'd be on acme.com.
Oh, so this is the inverse of what
Amazon's
they've tried.
Marketplace.
Yeah. Again, it's the same issue. If I'm Acme Shopify store, the last thing I want is somebody going to Amazon because the thing that Amazon's really good is hitting you with recommended products where you never leave Amazon. So I understand why they're doing this. I wouldn't bet money that they will succeed, but you never know. Amazon often succeeds.
Well, it would require relationships with all those different retailer websites, and those are individual relationships. It's not like it's as easy as saying, okay, now all retailer websites can have Amazon advertising. You have to incentivize each one differently, and that level of negotiation is hard to do.
Now, what I could see working is Amazon advertising on content creator websites where the Babylon Bee now has Amazon ads. Wall Street Journal has Amazon ads because the Babylon Bee doesn't have that same level of competition with Amazon and is very happy to get more ad revenue. And now Amazon's competing with Google AdSense. So I could see that working, but competing on Acme Shopify store, that's a I wouldn't want to be that salesperson and be like, hey, how would you like to advertise for your mortal enemy?
Yeah.
We'll pay you.
It worked on Miracle on 34th Street. Go over to Gimbel's, something there.
Yeah, so we're almost out of time. We should go to some questions. If we had any questions that came in.
There weren't really any questions that showed up in the chat. There was a ton of comments. Here's one from Sue Fink that just came in.
Okay.
Do you have a podcast explaining the best way for starving authors to buy ads that work? So how do you budget for that? It's targeting. You got to know your target.
Yeah. Although I do have an episode literally called The Starving Author, I believe, or The Starving Artist. If you go to authormedia.com and do a search for the word starving, there is an episode exactly for you. That's about what to do when you're on a really tight budget.
Well, I mean, I'm doing it again, Thomas. The Marine Corps operates on a shoestring budget, and we are still extremely effective at taking people out. It's really your targeting, it's your productivity, it's your it's knowing who exactly you want them to go to and knowing the pathway to get to those people the best so that you're not wasting any money. I saw this recently. I was on a publisher chat where they were talking to their authors and telling them what to do in order to make their advertising work. And they're like, use Meta's Advantage Plus placement and take advantage of their AI to make your ads better. And I was like, but Advantage Plus wasn't designed for author level budgets. It was designed for business level budgets to where you can drop $500 to $1,000 a week on ads. Yeah, that gives enough fuel for that engine to learn and really come up with that. But author doesn't have that. I know authors who are struggling to make $20 a day on their budget. You do not use Advantage Plus is all I'm saying. It wasn't designed for you.
Yeah, a lot of those machine learning engines require a certain amount of spend in order for the machine to learn. It can't make the kind of intuitive jumps that you can make. So if you're not spending very much money, you really can't use those tools. And so this is where, to him who has more is given. Because those tools are magical. When you're spending $500 a month or $1,000 a month, they can reinforce themselves and get really good. But yeah, if you're spending $20 a month, your money will just go poof with the machine learning engine.
It's just going away. What about something that Gary brought up? The thing keeps moving. I'm sorry. What about using AI to do a developmental edit of a novel?
It's getting really good at this. Some of the AIs you'll need to pay. If I were to use an AI for a developmental edit, the prompt would be important. But the new Gemini 2.5 can literally read your whole novel and then give you feedback on it. I've seen this done quite well for nonfiction. In fact, we have some discussion in the AI board on authormedia.social of using it for nonfiction. I will say my expertise when it comes to AI is more for using it for marketing purposes. Once you get into using it for craft, that's a little bit outside of my zone. Jonathan, have you used it for developmental edits at all?
I've tried it. The suggestions are really good if you have a story that has been written before. But as we encountered when we were testing some of the tools in the Patrons Toolbox, it still struggles with prologues, with time jumps. There's a lot of intuition that the model doesn't have yet to really interpret what it is your story is doing that human beings just do instinctively. We understand what a flashback is, but AI is just totally confused. It's just like, why are we now 30 years later? Or are we 30 years later? And it doesn't understand 30 years later, meaning an entirely different contextual window in which to interpret all the information. So honestly,
I feel like we're a few months or years away from AI being able to handle that sort of thing. Like we're kind of
I'm still
right
trust but verify.
Oh,
okay,
100%. I'm not saying don't get a human editor, but those sorts of misunderstandings are the sorts of things that are getting improved and may have already been fixed. If you tried Gemini 2.5 Pro, you may find that it handled that jump better. I'd be curious how it goes.
Oh, here's a question for me. Regarding targeting, one of the episodes recommends letting Amazon target for you because they know better. So if you're trying to find your targets, i.e. learn, then which method do you do? You need to know your reader. And honestly, I would meet several of them and ask them a whole bunch of questions and find out what they like and don't like. Why do they buy books? When do they buy books? Because a nursing mother, a brand new mother, is surfing her phone at 2:00 in the morning. Okay? She listens to her podcasts and her audiobooks at 2:00 in the morning while she's nursing a baby. And if you don't know that, then you're missing out on a great purchase window because no one's making good financial decisions at 2:00 in the morning. Okay? And as I always say, buying a book is a terrible financial decision. It's never necessary. Okay? You're trying to convince people to make a bad financial decision.
I disagree. I think
it doesn't matter. You don't need a book to eat or to live, okay? You're trying to get
that doesn't make it a bad financial
No, you're trying to get people to justify buying the book, which is what the price is about, the reviews are about. You're promising something that's going to justify the expenditure, the limited resources that they have. So when you're targeting these people, you need to understand why they are justifying or how they are justifying making the purchase for your book. So your promise needs to be right on target. Like my book is Swords and Sorcery for Marines, okay? I'm not making a promise to a romance reader, even though they're the biggest part of the market. I don't even want them, okay? They're going to negatively review my book. So that's a terrible target, and I actually exclude those targets because I know I don't want them. So really, you need to get to know your target, know the language they speak, and know when they buy.
And this is also how you beat the AI, just generally, is through that human-to-human connection.
Yes.
And so basically the two paths to success is all digital all the time, an army of AIs doing stuff for you, or having coffee with your reader. The middle road is death, right? You're either all offline or you're all online is where we're headed.
Right. All right, one last question, and then we're going to have to terminate it. This one's just really good. Is it a lack of integrity to not disclose AI content? Are we morally bankrupt to still take credit ownership for AI content, whereas all we contributed was the idea itself?
The only people I hear asking questions like this are people who haven't really made anything with AI themselves. Because once you start using AI, you realize that it's actually a lot harder.
Yeah, you think it's easy.
Yeah. The kind of folks who tend to ask this question think that you just say, AI, write me a book, and it wrote me a book. And then it's like, well, I'm taking credit for what the AI did. It's like, okay, does the handyman have to disclose that he's using a cordless drill instead of screwing in the screws himself? It's like he's still doing the work. He's got this tool that makes it easier, but it's still a lot of work. And getting something valuable from AI, where it's not just AI slop, requires a lot of work, and it requires different work. Some of the things are easier, but some of the things are actually harder. It requires more judgment. It requires a skill that you weren't taught in school, which is learning how to ask good questions.
So bringing it up. Yep.
In school, you're always giving the answers, right? The test provides the questions, you provide the answer. And so learning how to ask a good question, learning how to give a good prompt is actually non-trivial. And I've been focusing on this for 6 months, and I still struggle sometimes with prompt engineering. And so yeah, it's real work. And and it also requires judgment, which requires work to train your taste, to have good taste, to know good from bad, to be able to call balls and strikes, to know when to ignore Grammarly when it underlines something in green. I actually think Grammarly is a more insidious form of AI than these LLMs that we're using, all the the image generation and stuff, because we're more suspicious of the LLMs, but we tend to just accept the Grammarly suggestions, and the Grammarly suggestions will polish off your voice right out of your writing if you're not careful. And it's like, yes, this is a more efficient way of saying it, but it's a less me way of saying it.
Exactly.
But it may be that the you way of saying it is so wordy and convoluted that it's bad, right? And so that taste, that judgment, requires training. And so where the work comes in is you reading books on craft, you listening to podcasts on craft, you watching videos on craft, you reading really good books, classics that have endured the test of time, to understand a good sentence from a bad sentence, so you can know when to say yes and when to say no. All of that requires work. So you're not getting erased because you're using an AI tool.
One thing I would consider is, what is the final destination of your product that you're throwing together? It's the reader. And why did we create the product for the reader? Everyone has different reasons why. When I do it, it's to help them find a way out of darkness, or to make them smile, or make them enjoy their day a little bit more, give them escape from the horror that is reality. With all of that, I mean, am I really going to quibble about whether I typed my manuscript, whether I finger painted it on a cave wall, which is the closest connection you can get with creation? There's no moral question here. If it helps your reader, and if it's what your reader needs, then you did good. You done did the good thing. Okay. Taking credit for it, you know what? I don't even see that as a question anymore, because there's so much out there people are taking credit for that isn't real. but you know and you love your readers, and this is the whole point. It's that relationship with your reader that's going to make you successful, regardless of the tool that you're using. Thomas, you want to say something?
Einstein has a quote, supposedly. He said, "I've only had one original thought in my entire life." And there's a way of thinking about thinking that everything you know is based off of knowledge that other people have given you. There's this interesting thing that crows are really good at using tools, but they're not very good at figuring out how to use a tool. But once one crow learns how to use a stick in a certain way, all of the other crows will learn from that crow how to use a stick. And that's how we are, right? Like, you don't actually know how to grow wheat. You think you do, but you don't actually. But you could learn from another human who would teach you, who has inherited thousands of years of trial and error to help us know how to grow wheat efficiently, right? Like, there was a time when humans didn't know which plants were poisonous, right? That was a rough time. Like, all right, it's mushroom tasting time. It's like, oh, that guy died. That mushroom's no good.
All right,
Thump, this mushroom tasted like beef. It's pretty good. Oh, this mushroom lets you see God for 3 weeks. Like, maybe we need to be careful with that mushroom. It's like, right. So we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think that instead of feeling, so when it comes to giving credit, I think we all need a little bit of humility. And it's like, all of our stories are derivative. Most of them are the hero's journey, right? So it's like, and that's okay. What matters is what Jonathan said. It's about blessing your reader, contextualizing that eternal story in a better way for that person for this time that fits with the zeitgeist,
and remove your ego. Okay, it's not about you, it's about the reader.
Yeah.
So whether you made it or the robot made it, if it helps your reader, like for me, my audience, half of them are on the verge of killing themselves. So if I save one, who cares what the tool was that was used? Okay, so always keep that final destination in mind. Thomas, we need to have a word from our sponsor before we cut off here.
Yes. So who is our sponsor? It's the
you.
first. It's me. Yes. First email challenge. If you want help starting an email newsletter, I have a free 1-week challenge where you're going to go from nothing to something. So by the end of the week, you'll have a landing page, you'll have subscribers, you'll have sent your first email newsletter, and you'll know what you're doing. You'll have great confidence. You can sign up for that at firstemailchallenge.com. There's also a link down in the description. It's 100% free to sign up for that. My hope is that you'll stick around for the Author Email Academy, which will keep going to teach you how to continue growing your list, to set up an onboarding sequence and all of the advanced stuff. But if you have nothing and you're starting from scratch, do come to the free First Email Challenge. And Jonathan, you have some services for authors as well. Tell us about those.
I do. So what I want to do for the author update people is on my Substack. Okay, if you pay to become a paying subscriber on my Substack, I'm going to create weekly AdWord recommendations for you based off of your current bestseller in your genre. Okay, so there's a link in the description. If you click on the link, it'll take you to the post that kind of talks about this. Again, if you become a paying subscriber for every month that you're on the plan, or if you go annual, which puts a lot of work in for me. Okay, every week, I'm going to take a look at your book and I'm going to generate a list of 30 to 50 AdWords that are going to be suitable to according to what the bestseller is in the genre, or if that's going to be too expensive, I'll find something better. I'll find something that works for you. And get that together for you. And every week you'll have a new set of AdWords that you could use on Amazon, use on Meta, whatever it is that you need. It's an experiment I'm trying out. I want to see how many people are interested in it. I want to use my targeting background from USMC Intel and see what services I can provide for you guys so you don't have to use Advantage Plus, so that you can get that more targeted, localized impact zone is what we call it. Hitting Houthis.
There you go. And I think we should give the final word to one of our listeners. Thank you to everyone in the chat. We've had a great chat room. And I think PJ says it really well. She says we should fear the crows more than we should.
You really
fear
should.
AI.
Those things are evil.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for participating in the chat. For those of you listening in the future, do let us know what you think in the chat down below. Live long and prosper.